Dr. Jazz.
Thanks for taking the time, man. Appreciate it.
Jazz.
Yeah, man. Our pleasure. Now, where are you now?
I'm in Europe, in Slovenia.
Slovenia. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
You ever played here?
Oh, yeah. I played there. I mean, it's been a while. I played back when it was Yugoslavia
Oh, wow, man. Okay, that's the
with
80s.
Freddie Hubbard. I saw Freddie Hubbard in, gosh, probably 89, 90, maybe.
Okay, wow. Okay,
Long time ago.
that's a long time
Yep,
ago.
but not recently, unfortunately. So, you know, send the interview to everybody, and then they'll say, okay, we'll have him. We'll have him come back to.
Exactly. They'll check all the promoters will be like, man,
Yeah.
we need them. We need some Earth, Wind, and Wonder. So
That's right. Exactly.
no, but you know, I've listened to your music for such a long time. You mentioned Freddie and you know all these guys you've played with, and but I want to actually start with this Earth, Wind, and Wonder actually
Sure.
reference. You know, I listened to the record and it's beautiful. You know, it's like grooving. It's continuing what you've been doing arrangement wise also. And
Right.
what's I mean, I know you've done volume one like 5 years ago now already, but like what's the story? Why did you decide to go there? I mean, obviously, I guess Stevie and Earth, Wind, and Fire were influences in your youth as well. But like,
Yeah.
what's the story behind the project? I mean,
Yeah. That's the main thing. Two main things. Well, maybe three, I guess. The first part is the emotional part of it. Probably just there's always a special place in my heart for Earth, Wind, and Fire and Stevie Wonder, just because they were such an important part. Their music, as well as many others, were such an important part of my youth,
mm,
both as a human being and as a musician. You know, we used to play those songs in the gigs. I started playing when I was in high school, and I was doing gigs already by 10th grade. So we were already playing "I Wish," you know, or whatever.
yeah,
Do I do, you know, back in those days in the early, mid late 70s already. And so that's one thing. And then the other two things, um, probably of equal weight, maybe. One of them is certainly musical, you know, just great music, great
sure.
melodies,
Yeah,
great
yeah,
grooves,
yeah,
great harmony, great lyrics, great, you know, just the whole thing. I mean, the whole musical side of it is just rich. And, you know, as a saxophone player, you know, phrasing melodies is one thing, but then, you know, improvising over this music, just finding ways to be creative and
yeah,
extend it is super fun. And then the other component is the messages. You know, the messages of positivity and
yeah,
love and you know, being strong. Um,
yeah,
you know, they're very Afro-American centric and uplifting, and so it's an essential part of my culture that I resonate with and want to promote and expand and express. So those are the main reasons. And
yeah,
and maybe as a sidebar, you know, just my kind of creative, um, my creative puzzle solving kind of mindset. You know, I'm an engineer by training, and that's what I went to college for and wrote software for 4 years.
okay,
And so, you know, the puzzle of okay, how do I make this melody and how do I make
exactly.
it, you know, the arrangement, what kind of arrangement do I do? What works, you know, to keep the spirit of the song, but makes it really different, and what works for jazz, and what I can translate to cats to be, you know, to express themselves, and how we can work together as a group and all that. So, you know, creating the arrangement and the orchestration
Yeah,
aspect of it, what everybody does. And I don't do it all myself. I mean, the bandmates, as you know, from small group stuff, we all work together.
sure. Yeah,
And you know, I kind of I set the foundation for everything, and then okay, cats, what do you think? And cats, you know, they
yeah.
come
No,
forth
it's
to create. You know, they bring their own flavor to it, and so that's maybe the other component is like that. But that's a bigger picture, you know, the idea of
yeah,
teamwork and how we work together as a band, and that's an ongoing, very essential part of any jazz group, anyway, any repertoire.
yeah,
But yeah, the puzzle of making arrangements is fun. It's really fun for me. It's like solving a puzzle. It's like, okay, Bird of Beauty. I love this tune, Bird of Beauty. What am I gonna do with it? How can I turn it into how can I keep the spirit of it while finding this kind of jazzy pathway for it. So that's pretty much the story.
No, but
Okay.
I wanted to go back to the arrangements and just ask you, like, you know, when I listen to a tuner like Master Blaster, of course, you know, one of the classics, how did you then approach this one to make it your or the band's? I mean, what specifically, let's say that tuner, like,
Yeah. Well, so Master Blaster. So basically, there's a few domains, shall we say, right? Areas. So probably the first one is I think structurally, like, you know, can I organize this tune in some way to be like a jazz tune? Because a lot of pop tunes are not organized like a nice, neat AABA form or 32 bars or whatever, 12 bars or whatever. They have these different sections, verse and a chorus, another verse, another chorus, you know, whatever. It's got these different, you know, sections. And so, and then the melodies, the way the melodies go, in general, they tend to be a little more through composed, like they're not really organized like a tune like Have You Met Miss Jones, which is basically the same melody in each of the three A sections. It's basically the same melody with a couple different at the end of each section, and then the bridge is a little different, right? And that's pretty simple, not necessarily easy, but it's simple, right? It's not complicated. So, but most pop tunes are not quite so laid out quite so conveniently for you know, easy phrasing. So the first thing I think about is, can I translate whatever the song is into a saxophone playable instrumental melody? And then so Master Blaster kind of took care of itself because the melody is super clear and super playable. And there's some nuances in it, and I try to catch those actually, but it's pretty short tune. It's pretty short. It wasn't a whole lot of sections and stuff, and so that made that one kind of work. And I was actually, it's funny because I was driving with my wife coming back from we just had a little 1-day vacation. On the way home from our 1-day day trip, it came on the radio, and I was thinking I wanted one more tune for this album. So I was thinking,
oh, wow, okay.
And it came on the radio, and I was like, this reggae thing, boy, but that's a similar tempo. If I could hear this in a jazz groove, so it was kind of an organic process. So to go along with this intellectual process of, okay, can I organize this, goes this organic gut process of, is it gonna swing and what the groove is gonna be like. And so, and they kind of, those two things kind of work together. And every tune is a little different with that. But sometimes I'll hear them, like for example, a tune that didn't make the record is September. So I did do an arrangement in September, and the band's actually played it a few times on gigs as well. So, but it didn't quite work because of the way the tune is structured, and didn't quite work in the swing feel. You're going to hear it on verse 1 and 1 to 3 because now in my head I got the version, and it came together just much slower than Master Blaster came pretty much in a blink. It came fast, and then when I put it to the band, they were like boom, and it happened pretty much one of our best tunes because it just naturally does a whole natural thing. And it's funny, I didn't hear it at first, but I heard it on the radio, and you hear things when you hear them. The moment happens in the moment, and then boom, there it was. Okay, got it. And September is another story because I was kind of sort of hearing it in swing, and in the end, it's going to be a more straight eighth kind of a groove that's kind of similar in tempo to the original, but I'm going to put some harmony on it, so it'll be an adventure, but it'll be it'll be a different groove than I was originally thinking it. But that one will end up having taken more time. It'll be a more time intensive process. So every tune is a little different that way. Some of them happen pretty quick. Master Blaster is fast. Everything about it just happened quick. The harmony all happened quick. And then I went. What happens is I'll do this kind of inspired moment. Then I'll go back over it, and especially after you rehearse it. Okay, a couple more ideas. The band will give me a couple of ideas. And while we're playing it as a group, I'll say, "Oh yeah, I need a little more harmony there. I need a little couple special sprinkles of things here and there." And then the ending is a unique ending that I thought of later. I just said, "Oh yeah, let me," because I was just going to vamp out on the ending, which has got this bass boom, but no, the space figure. I said, well, that's cool, but let me think of an ending. So then I figured this kind of triplet based ending that kind of at the end. So that's that something like that would happen like in the last phase, which is what
Yeah,
I call the phase.
with finesse.
So they say composition is 10% inspiration and 90% perspiration. You know, like you like
Yeah,
you
yeah,
get the
sure. Yeah, yeah.
10%, 90% is like, oh my God, I'm gonna really just everything you have to do to just mold it. And so, you know, this one was probably more like 60-40, but that craft phase is still a very important phase, even
Oh man,
though
sure.
some of them are really fast with and big with the inspiration. A lot of it just happens quick. But most of them, man, it's probably 10-20% of the inspiration, and then the rest of it is me really working with the band and thinking on the piano and
Yeah.
listening to lots of times, you know, the original song and just. But you know, for instance, In the Stone is another example. That's one where the band, like, you know, I had this idea of the melody. I could hear it, da da da. I could hear all that on saxophone like early on. But then when I was going back over it, the modulation, because we go up a half step in the swing section, which is
Yeah.
not what they do with the record. They keep it down. So that was kind of again just some kind of a creative moment, whatever, just exploring. But then the ending, where me and Jeremy, the drummer, kind of get our interaction. That kind of came from the band, and he's like, oh, "Hey, let's try this," and he said, "Boom,"
Okay.
and he broke the groove up. I was like, "Yeah, that's it."
Yeah.
So you know, there's definitely this kind of journey that each tune goes through.
Yeah.
When you know when I hear them, I might have an idea, and then depending on how much of the idea is that moment of inspiration, the rest of it has to be the perspiration, and then the band comes in, and that process. There's a version of that process with different weights. Every tune's got different weights.
Sure.
Some have a lot of inspiration, sometimes have a little. Some have a lot of perspiration, some have a little, and then they all have at least some band development. And then what happens is that's the first phase, and then once we start playing it on gigs, that even changes it again. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
you play
sure.
it in audiences a half a dozen times. It's like, oh, let's tweak this, let's tweak that. The tempo might change a little bit, and it's so that process. The reason the energy of the band is really good is partly because of that. Like I try to get a lot of gigs, even if the gigs don't pay a lot of money. Sometimes I just take the gig just to get the band working and keep it.
Oh man,
You
sure,
know what I mean?
sure. Yeah, yeah. No, I mean, I like what you did arrangement wise, because it's especially when doing covers, it can be tricky. You know, it's like it can go into this. You don't want to go too far, you know, make it like 11 or 7, or you still want to preserve the energy of the tune on the original, but still make it interesting. I find it quite heavy. It's easy to screw it up. I'll put it like that, like, you know,
absolutely,
put a bunch of augmented chords and put it in 7. It's like, okay, that's
right. So you got to find a balance with that. And it's a process, you know. Sometimes sometimes it's faster, and sometimes it's slower. It just depends. But yes, that's a question that's always being asked. You know, okay, how much do I want to add? How much do I want to keep? And you know, don't make it too. Because the other thing about making it too, but the potential of making it too complicated is that when you get out on the road in real life, you don't always have your band members with you. So you know, if I have to use subs, I have to use then it can't be too involved. So I found that balance between making it, you know, I try to limit myself. Like a lot of the charts are 4 pages long, which is pretty long.
That's
so I try to go longer than that, because then it really is a lot for cats to deal with.
Oh, sure.
4 you can just kind of deal with. I really go for 2 pages. That's my ideal length and a lot of them are just 2 pages. And 3 sometimes, and every once in a while, you know, I guess about a third of them are about 4 pages. Like that's the way of the world is 4 pages. Some like the longer ones, the ones with different sections, they're longer. But Master Blast is just 2 pages because that's a shorter tune. You know, Reasons is a lot of stuff in there. So that's a solid 3-pager. I think I managed to get it down to 3 pages. Bird of Beauty's 2 pages. Yeah. So I think about this stuff as well, like a practical thing. In addition to all the
definitely
music and the creativity, there's also the practical side of it. Because in the real world, we have to get out there and play it. I can't have cats turning pages forever. You know, that's a lot for cats to deal with. I want them that glued into music. I don't want this. So but you know, in the end, I've been doing I've been doing projects like this. Like Earth, Wind and Wonder is its own thing, but I've been doing pop tunes since probably 25 years or 30 years. Like the first one I did was I did Saving All My Love for You, the Whitney Houston tune.
Oh yeah, sure.
Record in the 90s. That's 30 years ago, almost 30, like the 20s. You know, and whatever. You know, just so I was thinking about these kinds of tunes because I grew up with the tunes. So it's like, hey, if Miles and them can do I Thought About You and stuff because that's part of their know, then I can do my stuff. Why not? That they did it, and they had a reason for doing it, you know. And we as younger people have our own reasons, and therefore our own. Even though we like those old tunes, the newer tunes are closer to our own lives, and so that bit of honesty comes through. I think.
Oh man, sure, definitely, yeah. Oh, it's great music, you know, the original and what you've done. You know, you could listen to that stuff all the time. You know, like Master Blaster. I can listen to that, like loop it, and you know, it's great.
Yeah, so it's really fun, man.
Yeah,
it's really fun to play too. It's really super fun to play.
Oh, I can imagine. Yeah, like, but Don, I wanted to ask you. You know, you mentioned you studied engineering, but like, and you know, Stevie Wonder, Twin and Fire, I guess, all the funk from the '70s, and you know, soul and R&B. But where was the jazz part? Where does this come?
Yeah, my jazz
from
training?
In your life. I mean, like, where was the moment that you said, "Shit, I want to play that"? And
well, probably, you know, the most important my most important formative years were in high school, and I was really lucky because my high school my band director was a pretty flexible guy, and he saw how serious I was about music. Now, where my seriousness came from, I'm not sure. It's just, you know how it is. It's like it's a calling, essentially. You know what I mean? Like, I'm destined to be a musician, and that seemed pretty clear early on. Even though the engineering side of it and some other kind of intellectual things were part of my process, and still are. The music is something I loved from an early age. An honest, natural affinity towards music, and so when we got in a band, and there was a jazz band in high school. And then some of the guys in school band had a rock band. And so I joined their band. And some of the other guys had a funk band. I joined their band. So, you know, and all of it was just joyous for me. It's just really fun to do. And so as soon as I got got a rhythm for understanding, seeing myself as a saxophone player beyond the band, beyond school band, my practice picked up a lot. And I didn't know what to practice at first, but so my band director said, "Well, you should go study with Jamie Aebersold, because Jamie Aebersold, he lives across the river in New Albany. He's a world-renowned jazz educator. Go study with him." I said, "Cool." So I called Jamie on the phone. I said, "Mr. Aebersold, I'd like to study with you." He said, "Well, I can't take you myself because I'm too busy. I'll give you one of my proteges, former student, who lives in Louisville, where you live in Kentucky." So I called this guy. His name is Mike Tracy. So Mike Tracy took me as a student. So I went there every week for, like, you know, junior and senior year in high school, or sophomore and junior year, I should say. Even senior year, I was there a lot. And Mike basically took me through all the basics of learning saxophone and jazz. So he took me through scales and chords and learning tunes and embouchure and reeds and all this stuff. So my band director got me a horn. He ordered a nice horn for me, just as a school horn, but I didn't have a saxophone at that time. But he ordered a horn especially for me, which is great. So between him being supported by band director Ernie Sanders and then Mike Tracy, those guys got me going in terms of the basics. And then all I had to do was practice. And so I did what Mike told me. Plus, the other thing I really had fun with, and this relates to the Earth, Wind, and Wonder thing, I just turned the radio on and would play anything with the radio and just jam with the radio. And that was a big thing for me as a kid, was just jamming with the radio. I just found some notes. And then the other big thing I did for my jazz training in those days was I went to the Jamie Aebersold Summer Jazz Camp, which was happening in Louisville every summer. And, you know, Mike Tracy, my teacher, got me a scholarship, and I went in there every summer. So, and that week, you get a whole year.
Sure.
Like, you know, I run a jazz camp now. I run a Litchfield Jazz Camp now, and I have the same philosophy, which is just to immerse the students with, you know, with great jazz information. And so that's what happened at Jamie's camp. I went there for a week and got a year's worth of stuff to practice. And every year I go there every summer, having practice, because everything I studied in that 1 week. And the next week I get another year and practice all that stuff. So between those 3 years of practicing that, because David Baker, you know, he's a world-renowned, he's a University of IU, Indiana University, like a world-renowned educator. So he was one of our teachers there, and that guy, super intense. So between him, Jamie Aebersold himself, and Mike, I got so much data, information, and I was so disciplined about practice that I just took it all and then I had all these gigs with this rock band, with funk band, and then a school band. So that was my whole high school. So by the time I got to college at Harvard, I already knew like 200 tunes and had already
Wow.
played
Yeah.
like hundreds of gigs. I was working every single week, all through junior and senior and sophomore year.
Mm.
I was doing gigs every week. It was one of those bands, and I had done a ton of gigs, knew a ton of tunes, and so I just kept practicing and kept working. And then when I got to New York and everything, I then the next phase where I started, I joined these different professional like the bands were in Louisville were professional, but in New York, as you know, at that time, this is the early 80s,
Yeah.
or say mid 80s, Freddie Hubbard and all those guys were still alive. So that's when I joined all those guys. And that was another whole level. In fact, my first big gig was Betty Carter.
Yeah,
And
bro.
so,
Yeah, sure. I mean, I have that
yeah,
album actually. Yeah. I mean,
exactly. And
yeah,
so my first education was from her. And she taught me I learned so much music. So I never went to school for music. I studied just engineering in college. All my music study was my private teachers in Kentucky
was the best.
and then summer camp.
Yeah.
And then a ton of practice. And then all those professional musicians who I played with, they always taught me lessons. Like I learned from those guys. So many, music lessons of all types, how to play in rock style, how to play in funk style, when to play, when not to play, how to play with an ensemble, like a funk rock ensemble, how to solo in the appropriate style, and then a ton of life lessons, all kinds of stuff, showing up on time and don't get too drunk and I mean just
Sure.
my education, my education was a very real world based education. And to this day, all that stuff serves me. So when I teach this stuff. I teach all the stuff I learned, plus musical stuff. But then the life lessons are woven in there because I found that's as important to your ability to be a good musician in general as the actual technical details of the music itself.
Oh, yeah, that definitely. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
showing up on time and stuff like that. That's like,
Yeah, man. Yeah,
man,
and controlling the substances and
Yeah.
watching out for things like cigarette smoke and so many things,
Yeah,
and preparation, how to prepare for a gig, how to dress even. I mean, so many things.
everything. Yeah. Like, how did you decide to move to New York? And you
Yeah, that's a
mentioned
good story.
Betty Carter. Like, in
Yeah.
New York, how did all this
Yeah.
happen?
So check this out. So I went to Harvard University, right? So I studied engineering at Harvard. So 1 year in, so my sophomore year, um, I joined, first off, as a freshman, I joined the Harvard Jazz Band right away, of course. And that worked out great. So, Tom Everett was my teacher there. He was, again, super supportive. He saw how serious I was and everything. So he was very supportive. The next year, and I made a lot of good friends in that band. In fact, I joined another band, a rock band, when I was in that group of guys from the Harvard band. That's another whole story. But again, it's part of the process, right? You join different bands. Awesome. But one young man that came in my sophomore year was a gentleman named Sasha Lewis. Sasha Lewis is the son of the legendary jazz pianist John Lewis.
Oh, okay.
So me and Sasha became good friends, and we were in the Harvard Jazz Band together. So he said, "Hey man, you should come down to my house and hang out with me for the weekend." So I went with him like about 4 or 5 times. Took the train down to his place in New York from Cambridge for the weekend and hung out with his old man, with John Lewis.
Oh, wow.
And that was why did I do that? That the New York bug bit me, it bit me hard. So once I was there and I saw that music, I saw those cats, and Wynton Marsalis was a big influence.
Yeah.
He was very famous, and I was really into what he was doing. And then I had John Lewis. So I was like, uh-oh, I'm in trouble, because that's what I saw that as what I really wanted to do. And so at the end of my sophomore year, I said, you know what, I'm gonna take a year off and go and live in New York for a year. Well, that was tricky. My parents were not happy about that. But John Lewis found me an apartment, and everything was in place. So when I brought it to my dad, I had everything organized, and he said, "Man, you got it organized. We'll let you do it." So I basically took a year off from Harvard to get to New York, to go to New York. And I went to New York again, inspired by Sasha and John Lewis. And John helped me find my first apartment. And once I got there, then I met all kinds of people, and things just opened up. And as a side benefit, I found a computer gig, which I worked part-time
Okay.
to keep the bills paid. And I thought I'll go back to Harvard in a year or two, whatever, and I want to have my computer thing still cool. So that's why I got that. And the professional experience was great. So I got good software experience. and I was getting great gigs, and it was a great time to be in New York because, you know, there was a lot going on in jazz in the 80s. It was a great, you know, just great moment for jazz. I was super, super, super lucky. Just the timing was really in my favor. And then I met Winnard and Philip Harper, the Harper brothers,
Yeah.
who then introduced me to Betty Carter. And then from there, it just turned into more and more gigs because at my first gig with Betty Carter, it just so happened Wynton Marsalis was in the audience. My first gig with Betty, Wynton was there. And I joined his band shortly after that because Branford had happened to leave to go join Sting.
Sting, yeah, oh yeah, sure. Yeah.
Right, remember that? So I was the next cat after Branford.
So how was that like playing with Bramford? I mean, playing with Wynton. I mean, it was Tane on drums, right? And those guys.
Tane on drums.
And Kenny
Yeah,
Kirkland.
no. Kenny had already left because he joined Sting too at the
Oh,
same
it's
time.
oh yeah, exactly.
Him
Yeah.
and Branford both left to join Sting. So it's
Yeah,
Marcus
yeah.
Roberts
Oh yeah.
and
Wow.
Marcus and Bob Hurst. So that was like, and it was amazing. And it was absolutely amazing. In fact, to this day, I'm still processing certain musical things that they were doing that I was a kid. I mean, I'm a Harvard computer geek. I could play pretty good, but those guys were doing all kinds of stuff that I didn't fully understand at that time. Now, of course, later, I've dug in deep into all this rhythm and stuff they were doing.
Yeah, what's Tane is doing on those records, man? Like,
oh, bro, that stuff is great.
That's
crazy,
crazy.
incredible stuff. So I was very blessed and fortunate to get that experience, and then that led me to Tony Williams, and then Tony Williams' gig led me to Freddie Hubbard, and then that gig led me to Tom Harrell. I got all these gigs, and then I got married and stuff.
Wow.
And I actually never made it back to college to finish. So I still haven't got my degree yet, but fortunately I do teach at Harvard because they like me there. I love them. It's a love fest over there. So, you know, as far as jazz goes, my director, Tom Everett, called me about 10 years ago and said, "Hey, man, what are you doing next fall?" He called me right at the end of the summer. He said, "What are you doing this fall?" It was 2013, he called me. "Oh, I got some gigs." And it's 2012. I said 2013. It's 2012, actually, he called me. "And I got some gigs and whatever." He said, "Why don't you come and can you come and teach at Harvard?" I said, "What do you mean?" He said, I'm gonna take a leave and probably retire soon." I was like, "Yeah, I'll be there." So I rearranged everything and got myself there for a semester, and I've been in and out of there ever since. I'm teaching there now, and it's great. But yeah, being at Harvard is what led me to New York because of Sasha Lewis.
Oh, that's a cool one. Wow, that's
cool
amazing, man. Yeah, that's amazing. Like, how was Betty to you guys? I mean, you know, she was notorious for having younger players all the time. You know, like
yeah. So Betty was exactly. She was intense, and she's great musician, great creative spirit, amazing person to work for. And she to this day has taught me one of my first like jazz legend teachers, you know, she was. And she basically taught me how to work with singers, which has been great because I've worked with a ton of singers since then. I love working with vocalists anyway. So in fact, when I was at Harvard, I did a lot of gigs with a great singer named Sarah Lazarus. And you know Sarah? Yeah, Sarah. She won the first Thelonious Monk vocal competition. She lives in Paris. She's awesome. So she and I work together all the time. You know, when we were students there, she and I, and that's again, I told you, Harvard's there's a whole. We could tell a separate interview just about Harvard. That's its own.
Sure, I can believe it. Yeah.
But Sarah's was great. So Sarah was one of the first vocal experiences. I did do some work with some good vocalists in Kentucky too, which is really good. But then Sarah, I got to learn a lot from her. But Betty Carter, of course, being that extra level of experience, she went right to the point of certain things. For example, two main things she taught me that stuck with me to this day. Number one is number one is the swing. Like she was really like totally insistent on everything being in the groove, in the pocket, and swinging. And so she made me really think, you know, saxophone, you play a lot of notes and everything. So, you know, and not everything is always in the pocket, especially in my younger days, you know, just full train or whatever, right? So she's like, "No, that's cool for that. But, you know, if you're working with me and vocalists, you gotta really be in the pocket." That's my thing. Of course, obviously, when you listen to her stuff, it's really clear. Yeah. The other big thing was don't play all the time. And again, this is me just being a, you know, saxophone player playing lots of notes. She really taught me how to pace myself, how to leave space in the right places. And you know, when I was working with Sarah and others, we were all kids, so we're all trying to figure everything out. But Betty knew everything, not everything, but she knew because she's jazz, she had a ton of experience and knew exactly what to teach us. So she knew how to straighten us out, even though we did pretty good before. We did a lot better with her. So yeah, that was a tremendous, growth thing.
Lesson, yeah.
It's incredible. She also like she played really slow tempo sometimes, and I hadn't really done that as a kid. So she taught me about that, how to leave space for a slow tempo and how to make that work. That was a new thing for me, but she got us all doing it, man. Incredible.
Did you with her go to Europe the first time, or was it with Winton?
Oh no, the first European. So what happened with Betty? So I was with her about 85, 86, and then I got the call for Winton, and she wasn't using us horn players all the time, so it wasn't like I had a lot of work with her. So she understood when Winton called, she understood that that's a real road gig, so she used to go do that. So she was totally cool, and actually after I left, Craig Handy joined her. And
oh yeah, sure.
Her next record, I think it's Dropping Things. I think is the one he's on. He's the very next one. I have to look what I got. And of course, he's amazing. So that worked out great. But yeah. So I joined Winton after that, and then one teacher I had when I was in Boston was Billy Pierce.
Oh sure.
And Billy Pierce, I had some lessons with him, and also with Jerry Bergonzi. So when I was at Harvard, I studied with those guys, which was great. So they really, again, hooked me up and helped me. But once I after Winton's gig, I left Winton's in about 7, 8 months. I was out of Winton's gig. I left that gig, and then right after that, they called me, and Billy Pierce was working with Tony Williams in the Tony Williams Quintet at that time, and they had a 7-week tour of Europe. And Billy couldn't go out that long because he was teaching at Berkeley at that time, which is where I used to go take lessons with him. So he said, man, he called me on the phone and said, man, can you cover some of this tour with me? You'd be great to go with Tony. And actually, it's great because Billy was a pretty important influence, Billy Pierce, because I kind of played like him. I even looked like him a little bit when I was, like a young Billy Pierce in my early days, a little bit. But I played in his style a little bit. So he said, I think Tony would really like you. So he got me to cover half of this tour. And that's the first time I went to Europe. That was 1987. We played at Fabrik in Hamburg. That was our first. Then we went to the subway in Cologne, and then we did another. I remember those first two. Because there's a video of the subway that's on YouTube. I saw that one, so that one's out there with me. And that's my second gig with Tony. And then from there we did a whole bunch. We did the Quasimodo and all these other places.
Berlin,
full of smoke. Tons of smoke everywhere back in those days. Everybody smoked.
Berlin, yeah.
but it was great. I mean, it was playing with Tony. So I spent 4 years with Tony. I was in the band.
Oh really? Oh wow.
Until he died in 1991. I got the call when people couldn't make it. So I made quite a lot of tours with him, especially 87, 88, 89. Before I joined Freddie, I was doing a lot with Tony. And I got to get with Freddie Hubbard because Tony Williams' manager, Mary Ann Topper, she passed away a few years ago, but she's one of the very important jazz managers and impresarios. She had Josh Redman, she had Diana Krall, she had like some really important people. But she also had Tony and Freddie. Before those guys, she had Tony and Freddie. So when Ralph Moore left Freddie Hubbard, Mary Ann Topper calls me on the phone and says, man, get your butt down to Bluiett and sit in with Freddie Hubbard. He's looking for a tenor player. So I went down to Bluiett and sat in with him and got the gig. And so I stayed with him for about almost 2.5. Yeah, from April of 89 until October of 91. So I stayed with him 2.5 years. And luckily for me, his chops were still cool. The next cat after me in Freddie Hubbard's band was Javon Jackson. So Javon got about maybe 6 months of good Freddie. Like, because Freddie, man, those 2.5 years was killing. It was ridiculous. He just everything. It's ridiculous, stupid. He played so great. And Tony too. Those cats, Betty too. All those jazz masters, they were all like in their 50s at the height of their powers in the 80s. The stuff was ridiculous. Just so and they all had young bands, and so we were all pups, just trying to figure it out. But they were so strong. It was such a big learning thing. But Javon, he got about 6 months of good Freddie, and then his chops got damaged.
Yeah, a little bit,
for that, unfortunately. But I was lucky. I had 2.5 years, primo Freddie Hubbard, man, and 4 years with Tony with some overlap. It was ridiculous. And then Tony just died. I mean, that was just like a hospital, like a random insane thing, and he went in for gallbladder surgery and had a heart attack in the hospital, and they couldn't save him. So that was
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah.
crazy thing. But boy, he was playing great, super hip cat. Freddie was a little more interesting though. Freddie was more like
Yeah, how was like the tours with him? I mean, that must have been diverse, right?
It was pretty. Musically, it was great most of the time, but Freddie was more unpredictable because he had a thing going on and all that. So it was with drugs. It would cause an issue. At least once per tour, you'd have some kind of issue where he would, wouldn't come out the hotel room, or, and I got fired 5 times, 4 times before I finally got fired, the 5th time. And that would be over random stuff. One time we were doing an interview on the radio and I mentioned that I'd play with Winton. Boy, why did I do that? I was fired, boy. He couldn't stand Winton because Winton was very arrogant in those days. And so he talked stuff, so he pissed off Freddie and all that. So then I mentioned him. I didn't know any of this stuff, of course. So the political stuff was still to this day, I try to just, I don't care about politics and what people's quibbles with each other and stuff and egos and stuff. I don't care. I just want to get to the music, Boy, but cats, no blame for them. They have their stuff and all. And trust me, this, as you know, this business is very political and very, it's very strange sometimes. The business side of it drives so many things, and it makes people bitter sometimes. It makes people angry, and they fight each other when they should be. The best we can do is really look out for each other and tune in and support each other as best as we can. But it's not always easy to do that with the business being so competitive and stuff. So. But anyhow, so I got fired that time. I got fired for something else. Get a ton of players tickets, send them home. Man, next day he hired again. So, and he was on. He had already fired the band. I think the band because Billy Pierce, my teacher, was also with Freddie, and I think he was in one of those bands where he fired the whole band one time. They're like, "Oh, y'all go home." Fired everybody. I mean, they got whatever, but it was like, I think Kenny Garrett got fired a couple times. We all got fired. I mean, that was, I guess, almost a badge of honor to get fired by, if I'm in good company, he fired Kenny Garrett, he fired Pierce, he fired me. That's cool. So, it's pretty crazy. But man, musically, it was brilliant.
Yeah.
And those tunes, I knew all the tunes already because I wanted to be, when I was a college kid, I wanted to be Freddie Hubbard. He's one of my biggest influences in general. I mean, besides the saxophone, Dexter and Coltrane and Sonny Rollins and Wayne and all them, Lester Young, Hank Mobley. I mean, I wanted to be Freddie Hubbard, man. That was the cat I wanted to play like, and those tunes and everything. So, but so it was an honor to work with him, and it was amazing. It was truly, the drama was a drama, but you always a drama. There's always, something happening. But I mean, Tony didn't have it. I'll say this: Tony did not have drama. Tony was chill. There was zero, all totally professional. Betty Carter in general was cool. She would just get mad at the bass player. Like she'd mess with bass players and mess with the rhythm section. The horn players, she got on my butt if I played too much. If I wasn't swinging, she'd be in my butt about that. But in general, she was cool. But boy, the bass player, I saw her a few times, like piss at the bass player. She just would not, So that was, but in terms of professional drama, she kept herself cool, and her stamina, like all those cats. Her energy, she'd drive after a gig, she'd drive home 3-4 hours. She just had stamina, she had her act together, play piano, Hub would, all those cats would like except for the drug thing with Hubbard, in terms of when that got in there, that one of my lessons I've learned, I'm sure you've seen it over the years, the drug thing, for the most part, is a loser because you see it with certain cats. And a lot of cats who are very disciplined about stuff, they can do their little side thing with drugs. That's all right. If you're super disciplined about it, it's like anything. If you're you can deal with it. But if you're not disciplined, if you're all the time, like you really got to be all over it, especially opiates, cocaine, and crack. You can't, that stuff is too powerful. You can't play with it. And so I watch stuff happen. Alcohol too. Alcohol is very, very powerful. But I watched, I watch cats, like Roy Haynes is a good example of someone who knew how to have a drink and knew totally how to manage it. I was with Roy Haynes for about 10 years, from 88 to 98.
Oh, wow.
Never, ever had a problem. Never any issue. And we went to Europe a bunch of times too, but never had any issue. He was always killing, like not only just great, but killing like every night. All those cats in Hub too, killing, except for when the drugs would get control. And he was the only one that I worked with where the drugs would sometimes mess with the music.
Too much. Yeah, sure.
It wasn't much, but it happened. But the other cats, whatever they did, you didn't. It never influenced the music whatsoever. It never influenced. It was just consistent, killing, awesome music. You know, and Hub was those cats were all 99%, and Hub was like 85 or 90%, like just a little bit below. But that bit of it off the charts, that
Yeah.
1, 5, 10%, it is what it is. I mean,
Yeah, sure.
it's not like it's not like it's a secret. I mean, one of the gigs we were in Chicago, and it just went off the handle, went crazy. And I ran into a colleague later, this trumpet player named Louise Behringer. I saw Louise. I met her much later. I didn't even know her at the time. I met her like 10 years later. Oh yeah, I saw you. You came with Freddie Hubbard when he went crazy.
Oh shit, man.
She recognized me from being there when the thing went out. She was, oh yeah, I was there. I was like, oh yeah, well, that's one witness.
Man. Yeah, but
man, because everybody's life is different. You never know what people go through. So no judgment about any of it, because you never know what causes people to do what they got to do to keep themselves going. But it is a shame I as a professional, having seen it over all these decades, it is a shame that if your life journey leads you that way and that's what you're doing, it's a shame that it happens, because it does negatively influence the music in your body and all that, and it's really not cool.
Yeah.
Especially, it's a shame from my perspective, looking at Hub and how incredible he was, like on 95% of gigs, like incredible, just ridiculous. And then that percentage of things going wrong, was. But he's human, like we all are. Right?
Oh, sure, man. But we still, when I think of Freddie Hubbard, I first think of, his trumpet playing and compositions and the legendary albums. It's, in the end, it's about that, so.
Hello. Exactly.
So.
And it's not like 3 albums. It's
yeah.
Like 30.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like 30, or something. It's ridiculous.
Exactly.
That career, and not only his own albums, but all the stuff he played on.
Oh, man, sure.
Yeah. Speak No Evil, and I mean, The Soothsayer. And I mean, just so many records that aren't his records, aren't Lacy stuff, Free for All and stuff. And he gets, I mean, this.
One of the giants. Yeah.
Huh?
One of the giants. I mean,
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. So, but like I said, I think in any case, your life, anyone's life, is a learning journey. And so, me having been a part of that, I learned the whole spectrum, and not everything you learn is all flowers and rose petals and whatever. It's going to be some hard lessons in there.
Yeah.
And so that's one of the ones. Is like the drug thing is a tough one. Drug and alcohol. Got to manage that one, because it's if you can't manage it for whatever reason, whatever your journey is, it will cause problems. And so I watched that very carefully as a kid, and as a young musician, and even as an older one, I'm watching, and I was like, man, gotta be this one.
Yeah. Definitely, yeah. How did you, I listened today to The Time Is Now, actually. And it's your debut, and I just, back then, all these guys in your band were kind of like starting in a way, Christian and Benny Green was still really young, and I think Carl also, and you had. Yeah, and you had this band of amazing players, continuing on Wishlist. Like, how did you? I wanted to ask you, how did this story with Jerry Teakins begin, and with Crisscross, and how did you decide to? How did that record actually happen? I mean, it's personal.
Well, it's an interesting thing. So the Jerry Teakins thing basically happened because that was his thing, so basically in let's see, probably late 80s, the compact disc became a thing, right? So remember, it was albums before that, 12-inch, right? Vinyl. And then the CD became a very interesting thing. I should look it up the exact year, but I know it was late 80s.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
And then when the CD became a thing, there was all this demand. And that demand continued right up until about 10 years ago, 5-10 years ago. It started to come down, with the digital platforms and things. But that 20-year period between 1990 and 2010, something like that, CDs just were, but particularly that first 10 years between late and midnight, everybody wanted CDs. So with the Young Lions movement that was heralded by Wendholt and Terrence Blanchard and Donald Harrison and Tane and all these guys and myself, I'm in there a little bit, and some other bunch of younger, a ton of us younger players, what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All of us Young Lions, we had no problem getting record deals because there was so much demand for CDs. And so the major labels in the States were had signed a bunch of people. And I actually got approached by Verve in what year was it? 80? I guess in the 80s. I got approached by Verve already.
Oh.
And I was just out of, while I was in Tony's band, like early, just out of Wynton's band. And at that time I wasn't ready. So I said no. I didn't make it. That wasn't, I just didn't feel it yet, So the time is now. Let's see, so this is 80s. I hadn't even joined Freddie yet. So by the time I'd spent a couple of years with Freddie and Tony, and then another year or so with Freddie, I was like, okay, now I'm feeling my stuff like a lot more. So Jerry happened to approach me. The Verve thing was that opportunity was gone. So but Jerry Teakins was recording a lot of people in those days.
Yeah.
And he knew that CDs were a thing. So that was he saw himself as a catalog builder. So, he has Josh Redman's first record, Kenny Garrett's first record.
Yeah, everyone, yeah.
Chris Potter's first record. He's got introduced from Chris Potter. He's got all these different people. He was watching everybody,
Yeah.
And so he just approached me. And what happened was in December 1990, someone canceled on it. So last minute, they couldn't do a date. So he called me a week before the session. And this session was like around December 30th, something like that. I can't remember that date, but it was right around the end of December. And he called me like December 23rd or 22nd and said, hey, Don, it's Jerry Teakins, blah, blah, and he had a really raspy voice. And want to record it for me? Sure. So the band was the Freddie Hubbard Quintet at that time.
Yeah.
Except we didn't, obviously I didn't want to get Freddie because he's too expensive and stuff, but if you get Freddie Hubbard on a record, it becomes his record. It's like a Miles record. That record's something else. Cannonball Adderley's record sounds like a Miles record.
Exactly. Yeah, sure.
Miles' voice on that takes over. Same thing with Hubbard. So I got Tom Harrell, and Benny Green found Tom Harrell. He said, oh yeah, why don't you get Tom? I said, great. I knew him from the Tom Harrell Sam Jones Big Band from the 70s, so I was aware of him because of that.
That's the first time you played with Tom, actually, because then you ended up in his band, right?
Now was the first time we played together.
Ah, okay.
So
through your record.
Picked him up, and Benny Green brought him to session. And we just, I think when we had one rehearsal, and then Benny brought him, Benny took care of everything. So then me and Tom, actually, that turned into a fruitful thing.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah.
With him for 4 years, but yeah, he made those 2 records with me, based on Benny's recommendation. And Benny, Carl, and Christian and I had been with Hub, so we already had a vibe together.
Yeah.
Playing together for like a year with Hub. We've been on tour and stuff, so we were cool. So Tom came in, of course, killed it naturally because Tom's Tom, and it was awesome. And so that was how that happened. The time is now was me being ready. That was Verve. The Verve thing was that opportunity. I wasn't ready then, and the time is now I was ready. And then Wish List was, next December.
Next step. Yeah.
Next step. I was already, I got Steve Teray in there. Got 3 horns, and then the next one was After Dark.
Yeah.
And again, After Dark was cool because I've been playing, me and Scott Wendholt, who's a trumpeter on that one, we had done a year at Augie's, which is a club in New York City.
Yep.
We had done a year playing every Thursday. So that was a whole special thing that he and I had. And then I can't remember who introduced me to Darrell Grant, but it was still Carl and Christian. And then
Steve, right?
I can't remember who brought Noah Bless in. Someone brought in the trombone player.
Yeah.
And then Steve Wilson. I knew Steve because I've been working with Billy Drummond and Steve and Freddie Bryant. We all had a thing. We used to hang together in the 80s and stuff. And when Steve and Billy Drummond came up from Virginia, we somehow got it. And Joshua Lewis was still on the scene in those days too, the guy from Harvard, John Lewis's son. We all were kind of hanging and stuff like that and playing. So I got Steve in there and wanted to write for the Four Horns and all that. So that's how that happened. But that was just me. Like I signed with Jerry for three records with the idea that I knew I'd want to have in my mind, next record. I know I'll make one, I'll make another one. I know one's coming. I know another one's coming. So it worked out great. And he did he paid okay, and it was everything was fine. It was all a good situation. I knew in a year I'd make another record, so let me just go on and get prepared for that. everything. So that proved to be a very fruitful relationship. And then the other interesting thing that happened is I met a Dutch bass player named Joris Tepe.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about Joris, yeah, because you
Yeah,
have
of course.
a
Well, I met him in
30-year.
'92, and that
Ah,
worked
okay.
out
Wow.
brilliantly because he was Joris. Besides being a good player and writer, he also had a real knack for putting together tours.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Sure.
we started coming over and doing on tours. So then I met Jerry. Like he was in Enschede at the time. He lived in Enschede before. Actually, I lived his whole life in Enschede. That's where the label was. And we would, yeah, we'd pass by Enschede, or he'd meet us somewhere in Amsterdam and give me a bunch of CDs, I'd buy them from, and we'd sell them on the tours. And it was great because, it happened to be a Dutch label. I had a Dutch bass player as a good friend. We did a ton of tours. Like we were over there 2 or 3 times a year, 93, 94, 95, 96, 97. We kept going over there and doing stuff. And then, yeah, having Jerry as a label worked out perfectly. So I would just buy a bunch of CDs from him and sell them on the gigs. It was great.
Beautiful, yeah.
Yeah.
Did you find it hard or really easy in the beginning to start leading bands? I mean, were you like,
No, it was pretty easy because
okay.
I had so many good role models.
Yeah, lessons learned. Yeah.
Tony and Roy Haynes and Betty Carter and all these people I'd watched. Plus all the cats I've worked with in Kentucky and in Boston and stuff. I had so many good role models. And I'm a natural leader anyway. I'm a natural communicator, so it's part of, not necessarily natural, but I certainly developed it, And so from a perspective of having a musical vision and organizing, I learned a lot.
Yeah.
And then it all came naturally sufficiently to me that I could translate that pretty well to making, good presentations and good projects and good gigs. Of course I make my share of mistakes like everybody else, but it's comfortable for me to be in front and to view the situation and to find the balance between what I had to say and what my band members had to say. That part of it really developed a lot, but it still was not that hard for me. I was never a really egotistical guy, fortunately. Just but you always try to see that right balance between putting yourself out there as a leader and sharing the balance, especially when you have so many good players. I mean, I've had such good players in my band. I knew early on not to try to take all the glory because it's like, I got Benny Green in the band for a while. It's like he's killing, and I got one of the bands I worked with, the Harper Brothers band, with Bernard and Philip Harper, they were the same way. Like they knew how to balance out. And they had Benny Green. Benny Green was in that band, so I knew him from that situation. And they knew how to feature everybody and be leaders at the same time. And after you do it for a while, you get a feel for it. And it's very you definitely build a skill over the years, but it's pretty clear. And if you look at it. As long as you don't have your own ego or too much in your head, that's because
that can be dangerous. Yeah,
it can be dangerous. And the American thing is like so often focused around one person.
Yeah.
The solo artist, Beyonce or Michael Jackson or whatever. No one ever talks about the sideman or whatever, but jazz has always been, again, the business side of it is about the star. So, Freddie Hubbard took us on tour, and the tours only worked because it was Freddie Hubbard, because of business. That's what drove the business. But when it came to the bandstand, it was a very balanced.
Yeah.
Because he gave a lot of us a lot of room. It was great. Even as egotistical as he could be, he was more than generous with us. And that's a big lesson for me to watch that. From him and everybody, Haynes, all of them, Betty, they're all the same. They're all generous with all the cats.
Yeah. But you had the chance to learn, from this first generation, basically, almost, the guys. That's quite rare, many of the younger cats. It's different. I mean, they learn from their elders, obviously, but their elders are the ones who played with the guys you played with. So it's
right. One generation removed.
Yeah. So you
don't forget, a lot of those younger guys are all like they're learning in school.
Yeah.
So my generation pretty much we all learned from the cats. I went to school for engineering, but my jazz education came from my teachers and from working with Betty Carter and those guys. And that's the biggest part of my jazz education. The most formative part was in the beginning, like I said to you, in school. That was the part where it's got everything. All the foundation was laid. Then all the other layers of important jazz lessons and expression and stuff and experience that came from those cats, from the roots of those jazz masters. And I feel thanks every day for coming along at the right time, where I could actually get that kind of interaction with them, the real cats. I mean, that's a real blessing, man. Because working with me is cool, and I've got some young guys in my band and stuff, and that's fine. And I'm able to give them a lot, but it's not like, still not like the real jazz legends. That's a different thing.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean. Yeah, that's
And then if you learn in school, that's really different. Because school is like, school is like, it's very academic about the whole thing, and so the data is pretty cool. Some, hopefully, mostly, but then all the other stuff, the life experience and the nuances of the spirit of the music, the African American kind of cultural part of it, and the way you deal with an audience, and those kinds of things you aren't really you get in school. You don't really get that. You get the data, and that's fine. Though the data is cool, and it's good to have the data, but there's another thing that comes from really tapping into the spirit of the music and being around people who give their lives to the music and who invented the music. That's another kind of, that's another kind of interaction. You can touch that source like that. So,
being on the road,
is a good school education and then a really good gig with somebody who's really serious about the music. And so hopefully that will continue, and it does to some extent. I mean, there's still a lot of good touring bands, but
it's
not like it was when I was coming up. I was very lucky.
Yeah, I mean, I talked to you mentioned Ralph Moore and Billy Pierce, and all these guys have obviously toured like you with Art or with all these guys, and it's just like, man, that's priceless. That's
right.
One tour is like equals, I don't know,
like a year of education. Yeah, good.
Year at least.
Exactly. You learn something. I mean, boy, look, it's nothing like being next to a powerhouse like Freddie Hubbard. That's just
man. Don, not to take too much your time, but I just wanted to ask, when I listened to the first record, I love those tunes like Night and After Dark, and the record starts with that one. And how did you write? When did you start writing the music? Music actually. And are you still writing nowadays? Like, besides arranging stuff, like what's happening with the original music? I mean.
Yeah, so the writing really started for real in college.
Okay.
And I did some writing in high school a little bit, but the main writing was in college. And I joined a couple of organizations that partly drove that. One thing was this group called City Step, which was a dance group. So I wrote for City Step.
Okay.
And they had some needs for dance, for music, original music. I said, let me just go for it. And I'd written some, so I thought, let me just jump in. And so luckily I was working with other good composers. One of them, Adam Gorgoni, he's in film writing. He actually, moved to Hollywood and did a lot of good film writing. And he was one of the writers. And another guy, Norman Yamada. Norman's done some writing. These are Harvard guys, but I learned from them. And then of course I knew a bunch of tunes. I learned a couple of tunes. So I knew already the basics of writing just from studying so many tunes. So when it came time to write my own music, I had good, foundation, and then a good inspiration. So because writing for dance requires, you look at to fit a story, to make a story, and that was really good for me to think about as a writer, because that's really what it's about, more so than chords and scales and melody and rhythm and all that. That's all elements of it, but in the end, it's about a story. And so I hit it from that perspective, which is really helpful to me in my early years of writing. So then the other thing that was real inspiration to me was, and that was in college. That's early '80s. And then, of course, working with Freddie, working with Tony, working with those guys was great. Vincent, of course, I loved his music, what he wrote and everything. So then the other thing that happened was in 1988, the group Take Six came out. And that was somehow, at that moment when that record came out, I was really hearing the harmony in another kind of way. Like I knew a lot of the harmony they use is based in like jazz harmony, of course, but hearing it with the voices and hearing it with
Yeah.
they have jazz and gospel and R&B, pop kind of influences all mixed in. So that combination really spoke to my musical ear, and I could hear it in a way that I hadn't noticed it before. So it allowed me or inspired me to go past the basic harmony that I've been writing with, which is based on mostly standards, and expand the harmony. So when I got to even the time is now, which is 1990, already in there, I already put in some take six type harmony, which is mostly what I interpreted as the harmony is non-diatonic, non-diatonic harmonic progressions and modulating cadences. So you land here, then you land over there, you land over there, different tone centers. And then the journey would be, so the time is now, and even my arrangements of some of the other tunes were based on incorporating landing in different places harmonically outside the fundamental key. And that my ear was really was talking to my ear a lot. So those tunes, Rim, all those tunes from After Dark in particular, were really influenced by that. And so, and then I just kept on going with all the other records since then, especially the ensemble records, like the Voice of Saxophone is really based on that stuff. And then I've written a bunch of big band charts, and that stuff is influenced. But a lot of my small group stuff, even harmonically, I did a good arrangement. I think it's a good arrangement of Speak No Evil, for example, and that one has a lot of this kind of a lot of kinds of harmonies in there. So that was kind of the journey of those early years, and then I got dug deeper into Wayne and Monk and other things like that. Sam Rivers.
Oh man, I love it.
Different kinds of like Andrew Hill, like different kinds of sounds, even Ornette a bit. Different kinds of intermingle and all this stuff. And so, and then Weather Report, and of course Stevie Wonder has always been in there through my whole, and Earth, Wind and Fire, of course, because Earth, Wind and Fire stuff was written by this guy named Charles Stepney, and Charles Stepney was a genius, so so all that stuff is in there, and as I'm kind of processing it through, the Take Six kind of, at that moment when that first one came out, kind of galvanized a certain collection of harmonic approaches. Then I just ran with it on my own. And every opportunity I had to add something, even the Fire Within, they have there's elements of those kinds of harmonies all throughout all my compositions through that period. Actually, since then, really. So now, and the other thing I did actually kind of interesting is I started a funk band in 2009. So the record's called Big Funk Live. So the band's called Big Funk. So Big Funk Live has some other original material in it that incorporates some more directly funky grooves. And that's I think that record has about 5 original songs on it. And even actually Earth, Wind and Wonder, and Earth, Wind and Wonder 2, they have the Elements and the Wonder of You on Earth, Wind and Wonder, and then Arise and Profusion. So Profusion is my most recent composition, like the original composition.
Yeah.
And so that one there was an intention behind that one to take Too High and Contusion and put those together as a mashup, and then put some other 7/4 thing or whatever. But now what I'm listening to and what I really want to write is what's influenced my writing now, and I will be doing an original record pretty soon. I think or one with more originals on it, so it's coming soon. I've been really digging into Hermeto Pasquale. It's probably one of my
really? Oh wow, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, so I'm really
genius.
So that's been going on about 10 years. And some of the writing that no one's heard yet, except over in Europe, I did some orchestra projects with Joris Taper, and I wrote like maybe about 5 pieces for full symphonic orchestra, and that was a huge learning thing. And so that got me really digging into themes more, which is kind of like the Elements is based on themes. Everything, all my writing is based on themes anyway. Because that's my favorite writers, Wayne and all the Monk. It's based on motifs, And so even some of my favorite players, like one of my favorite saxophone players is Oliver Nelson. He's a very motific kind of player.
Sure. Yeah.
And so I love that kind of musical focus. It's different than something that's more free form or something that's more linear. I love all that, but the theme thing is really my thing. So But yeah, so the writing is in the last 10 years, I've been able to get a little bit of the Hermeto kind of thing in there. And I have a lot more ideas that are in here that are waiting to get out. So it's now just a matter of, and the guy I recently discovered, what I'm checking out now is this phenomenal singer named Jacob Collier.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. So I've been checking out his harmony thing, which is like a take 6 on steroids.
Yeah. True, man.
Like
Yeah.
microtonal modulations and all this stuff with rhythm and crazy subdivisions with rhythm and all this madness. And the actual harmony itself is quite heavy.
Yeah.
Really non-diatonic. And so, or at least not diatonic in terms of the progression. The foundation is still, based on
yeah.
But just going all over the place to get back to it. You go way out here, come on back. And so all this stuff I'm taking in now, and the Brazilians really have a way of doing it. And they have their own, because there's other ones like Edu Lobo. I mean, there's also stuff like that, but and the more straight ahead ones, the popular ones. But Hermeto, Edu, Introverted Ward, Milton Nascimento.
Nascimento, yeah, sure.
Yeah, there's
all these guys. Yeah.
So I want to get some. So my next, not necessarily the next project, but in the next couple of records, whatever they are, next 2 or 3 records, I'm going to do quite a bit more original material and flesh out these ideas because they're rolling around in here waiting to come out. And I'm still studying. I'm still taking stuff in. But I figure, I've got on the study side of it, it's years more. Because Hermeto, I don't know how much Hermeto you've checked out.
Yeah, sure. Man,
super heavy.
It's intense. So, it's really.
So I'm not going to get that deep like especially the technical stuff. But the harmony is another story. I'm all about the harmony. So I'm going to really try to dig into his harmony.
What he's doing,
and harmony of people like him. I'm going to dig deeper into that and try to get some of that into a more straight ahead, a jazz straight ahead kind of scenario, and figure out how to juxtapose the harmony and those with a straight ahead jazz groove with the Afro. So it might be a little funk, it might be a little whatever it is.
Yeah.
So of course, Brazil is based on Afro anyway. I mean that comes from Africa in a way, but they have their own thing among the Brazilian grooves. Exploring the grooves is another thing.
Oh man, that's
another time. I might like a real true Brazilian
crazy.
With Nilson Mata and those guys. I mean, I play with those guys and they're great. So I could see myself doing something with them anyway. Right now, what I'm thinking of is a straight ahead project or a series of them or whatever, like a jazz project or jazz funk or whatever, but utilizing more of this kind of harmony. Because I think it's just fantastic. And then I want to blow over this. I want to find a way.
Oh so, man, sure. That's the next
thing. This is really in my head, man, for sure. So it's just a matter of time. And like maybe this winter, like get the piano and just work on it. It's right there. Call my name. So it's just a matter of time. Got the keyboard right here, so I got the tools. So it's just a time thing. But I'm busy with teaching and with touring and stuff until end of November. And then December is pretty quiet, and January is quiet for the most part, February. So I'm gonna try to, hunker down. It's cold outside, and just come up with the stuff, and now see what I can do.
Fantastic. Yeah, I mean, you kind of almost answered it. Well, yeah, I wanted to ask you just for the end, like, what's on the schedule? I mean, are you coming to Europe, and when is the volume 3 of Earth, Wind and Wonder coming out and stuff like that? I mean,
well, so I got a call from. They haven't confirmed yet, but I might come to Romania for Steve. That has a good festival. I played there last year with Joris Taper, and they and we did trio there, which was great people and a great little festival. So they asked me to bring something over with Earth, Wind and Wonder. So they asked me to bring something over, and I recommended Earth, Wind and Wonder, which they liked. So I hope that they do that. So we'll see. So I hope I can get over there with that. That's the end of October. And I'm coming to London. Actually, I'm leaving tomorrow to go to London to play the Pizza Express with Joris.
Oh, wow.
The quartet there with Joris Taper and Stephen Keogh and Matthias Geiser. Really good Matthias Geier. We have a record that we made last year. We played there, and it's a quartet record. It's pretty nice, actually.
Oh, beautiful.
That's going to come out sometime towards the end of the year, but we're going to go there and do some more gigs there. And then from there I go to the Netherlands and teach at the Prince Claus Conservatory, where I've been teaching.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Program. So I'll spend my week there, and then I'll come on back, and then after that I've got quite a few gigs in the States, up and down the East Coast. Combination of Earth, Wind and Wonder, just mostly just working. I got a nice one in Philadelphia. There's a jazz club there. With one there. I got a few in Jersey, and then I got a bunch of sideman things, which is always happens. So got a bunch of those. And then my Harvard gig starts. My current Harvard gig, I'm there 8 times per semester. So I start right at the beginning of October and go through the end of November. Teaching the kids there. So I'll be doing that every week or every. But like 8. It'll be Sure. I'll miss a few Thursdays because of gigs, but basically I'll be there every week. And then promoting my current record. So I'm still, that's a process, as you know, it's ongoing. So I'm working on just getting the word out about working on the digital platform promotion stuff, which is, it's just kind of heavy lifting. I've done some of the work. I've hired some companies to do some stuff, and that helps a lot. But like I hired a company to do Spotify promotion, playlist promotion, and all that. So it's doing pretty well. That's when I wanted to. It's doing pretty well on Spotify. It's #1 on the radio.
Oh wow!
In the States.
Really?
So that just happened on Thursday. So it's #1, which is great. So just trying to get the word out about that, and just try to generate gigs for next year for the band. Trying to get some festivals and stuff for next year. But I got to figure out the next record. So Earth, Wind & Wonder Volume 3 will probably be a couple of records down the line. I need to do a big band record because I got a bunch of big band charts, and I did a big band gig this past June, and it reminded me how much fun that was. So it's expensive, so I got to figure that out. But I got good charts, and I wanna go back through the charts. So this winter might be that project. The winter might be to go through the big band charts.
Beautiful.
And own about 8 of them or something for the big band record, and really go through and put it. I got this Brazilian, I got the Jacob Collier thing, I got the Take 6 thing. I got all these different, not to mention Wayne and all the rest of them, and Oliver Nelson, and who's a great big band writer, as you know.
Yeah, sure.
Thad Jones is one of my favorites. I got all these ideas. So the writing is going to be a big thing this coming year for me. The big band is probably a top priority for the next year. And what I want to do is flesh out the charts over the winter, and then find a residency in New York and New Jersey, where I go once a month with the band and play for a few months in a row, and then jump in the studio. That's really my goal for the big band. So I think that might be the next record. And then I want to do a ballads record. So we'll see. I might squeeze that in between. So we'll see. I just did a nice gig with the great guitar player named Freddie Bryant.
Sure.
Back in the day.
Yeah.
He's a friend of Sasha Lewis's and stuff. So we all have, we have a long history. We just played a gig together last couple weeks ago. So I can see myself doing some duo with him.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah, he's a great guitarist.
Not to mention some piano and maybe some ensemble. I got to figure all that out. So the two next projects, the big band's one, and maybe the mellow record, maybe, with some duos and some ensemble, depending on what.
Beautiful.
And then Earth, Wind & Wonder 3 will probably be after that. I should imagine, so 25, maybe 25, 26. So, that's some horizon, man.
Man, that's a lot of music. Looking forward to all of that. So
it's exciting stuff, man. I feel very blessed to have options and inspiration.
Yeah,
it's great.
Definitely, man.
I'll mention one more quick thing as a sidebar to what we just my general thing, just to share. So one of my big things is health and fitness. We talked about the drug thing and all that, and one of the big really energized my life is I cleaned up my diet. The American diet is very bad, as you know. So I never ate that bad. Well, when I was a kid, I did. I grew up in the South, and we ate bad stuff. It was just canned food and processed meat, and it was just a bad scene. But we didn't know any better in those days in the '70s. So that's a bummer. But whatever. Got past that, and now I eat fresh
oh man,
possible, organic, all that. Very little processed food. Some meat, but if it's organic, grass fed, the whole thing. And I really try to do be as clean as possible. And then I'm in the gym regularly, fitness, biking and running and stuff.
Oh, beautiful.
So in shape. So, for example, the Jazz Education Network Conference, which is coming up it's going to be in New Orleans this year. I'm actually doing a workshop. They hired me to do it. They hired me. They asked me to do a workshop about health and fitness. I applied, and they.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay, that's cool.
Actually, my second one. I did one 2 years ago. So they wanted me to do it again. So I'm doing health and fitness. So that's a big thing for me. Is I'm a big believer in the value of clean eating and physical fitness for your music.
Yeah.
Because for stamina, for creativity, for oxygen, you know, for
Americans, yeah.
longevity
Yeah.
for this, I think that, you know, making great, you know, health choices is one of the best things you can do for your music. And so it's a big part of my philosophy is that, you know, just in general terms. And so that's a big, you know, one of my important things that I'm working on. And so I've already got, of course, that presentation is pretty prepared already, but I'm always studying about how to maintain and have an awesome,
That's
you know,
important. Yeah.
journey. Because, you know,
Man.
because stuff happens all the time, you know. I mean, the older you get, the more stuff happens. Believe me. So, you know, when you try to make good choices and you do the best you can, and you make a good effort with it, and succeed at that part of it,
Yeah.
It makes a big difference.
Oh man, absolutely.
It really helps you because
Absolutely.
we're all gonna get sick every once in a while. We're all gonna break a bone, or we're gonna have an injury, or whatever it is. And if you're cool, you know, in terms of how you take care of yourself, your recovery is much better.
Yeah. Yeah.
The outcome, all the outcomes are better, you know, when you take care of yourself. So I've been promoting that, and that's another. So I just want to mention that as another kind of important thing.
No, it's important. You know,
Yeah.
it's our fuel. You know what we put into us. Like, you know, it's yeah, definitely. Cool, man.
Yes, sir.
Don, thanks so much for sharing some of this stuff, and I hope to catch you in Europe next time if you're.